Welcome to our podcast, What No Mom Told You, where the rarely spoken truths finally get loud.
I'm Megan Nelson.
And I'm Pauline Walfish. And this is a therapist-led podcast where we talk about the things no one warned you about, the truths that are often kept quiet.
We're naming the messy parts of life: motherhood, fertility, loss, grief, and joy, and everything in between, without judgment.
Because the rarely spoken truths need to be said out loud, and because no one should feel alone.
Welcome to What No Mom Told You.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Pauline Walfish, and I am here with my faithful co-host, Megan Nelson. Megan, take us away and introduce us to our new guest.
Hi, everyone. Today we're here with Jillian Martino. She is a New York licensed creative arts therapist. She uses clinical skills, creativity, and art to support individuals navigating trauma, shame, self-worth, feeling stuck in patterns that no longer serve them. Jillian is an EMDR-trained therapist who frequently uses parts work with clients. She has experience working with individuals with substance use disorders, severe mental illnesses, veterans experiencing PTSD, and unhoused individuals. Today, Jillian is joining us to talk about what it's like making a decision to become a parent while working on healing your inner child. Welcome, Jillian.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jillian, first I want to say how much fun it's been getting to work alongside of you and having that creative energy coming to our team in being able to look at things in a different way than some of us are used to looking at. So I'm excited to have you here today, and we get to share some of the insights and knowledge that you have with the people out there who might be sitting home deciding whether they should be a parent or not, and whether they want to be a parent or not. We live in a very pronatal society where it's just assumed that everybody is going to have children, and that's not always the case for people. Sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice. But I know that you are really excited about the work of the inner child and how that comes into the decision to be a parent. So I think this is going to be a really great episode, and I'm excited. So I guess I want to just start off by maybe asking you to explain to people, like, what does that mean, an inner child? Because I think people have different ideas about what that means, or maybe some people have never heard of it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think inner child work is kind of what it sounds like, right? Like with parts work or IFS, which is a type of trauma therapy, the belief is that we have all these different parts of self, think Inside Out, like the Disney movie, um, that play different roles in our life. And our inner child is really our youngest version of self, right? So depending on what your childhood might look like, your inner child might need more support. And even if we had a glowing childhood, right, our inner child might just need support and being able to be silly and be free and be open, because those are things that sometimes we lose in our adulthood, but is still so important to nurture, right? And something children definitely bring out in us. So yeah, working with the inner child can be such an important thing in deciding to become a parent, because our children trigger our own inner child.
Yes, for sure. And it's not something we're trying to get rid of, right? Like, we're not trying to grow them up so that they're not a child anymore. We're actually like meeting them where they are. Or
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with parts work, it's a really big belief that like even our negative parts, right, have value and are a part of who we are, right? And then maybe we need some adjustments because they no longer fit into our life the way that they used to, right? But the essence of who they are and what they are doing, what they're protecting us from, or what they value is part of us. So it's really just shaping and shifting that to better fit the time in your life now. Right.
How
And
might
all of you.
negative parts show up? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody. I think it can show up in stuff like self-sabotaging behavior. It can show up in the way that we argue, right? Whether we're really argumentative, whether we're even the opposite, right? We shut down in our arguments, or even too, like maybe behaviors that in theory are like a little more destructive, right? Whether it's like addiction or, something like gambling or like hypersexuality, right? Like there's so many different ways it can show up. And I think it's different for everybody. It also, too, can show up in even like over intellectualizing stuff, right? Like avoiding emotion altogether, which sometimes we think of as a positive thing, but definitely could be a negative if we're avoiding our emotions entirely.
Yeah. And the Dick Schwartz, who's like the founder of IFS, would like probably object to us even saying negative parts, right? Because there are no
Sure.
bad parts. They all serve a purpose. They all like are part of who we are and have purpose and reason and are trying to help us or protect us, even when it's maybe not always the healthiest way to help us or protect us, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to describe what even IFS stands for, right?
You're keeping us honest, Megan.
People
Yeah.
don't know IFS. What is IFS?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it stands for internal family systems, right? So think of it like that. Like your parts are literally a little internal family, right?
Mhm.
And we want them to feel whole and we want them to feel like they are working together. And sometimes in life, they do go in all these different directions. I like to explain it like a minivan, on like a long road trip. And we're all fighting in the car.
Right.
And the hope is to have a really calm car by the end of it.
Yes.
Yeah. But at some point, someone might have to get out and throw up, or somebody might have an argument.
Yeah. And using that analogy, I often say, like, but you wouldn't give the keys to drive the minivan to the 2-year-old in the back seat, right? Like, you would still
Yeah.
want an adult part to be actually driving the car. And so that kind of brings us to like that decision about choosing to become a parent, right? Who is making that decision? So is it the inner child who decides to become or not become a parent? I'm fascinated to kind of dive into that with Jillian.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I kind of, again, let's use that money van reference because I think it's pretty digestible for folks. I always think, right, like I have maybe my adult self or like the most whole version of self, the self that I find myself in the most. In my head, it's a therapist, it's very intellectual and it thinks things through. And I like that part in the driver's seat. Sometimes it loses its driving seat moments when things get heated, But in talking about like integrating all of the parts of self, I like to think of it like they're my co pilot, right? And all of those parts are really important. And like sometimes I do need to hear their suggestions on directions and so on. And when I look at it that way, that is kind of how I make that choice and decision, right? This really like grounded version of me is the deciding factor, sure, but it weighs all of the options of the other parts and what that might look like. Maybe parts of me that hold pain, or parts of me that hold anger, or parts of me that hold fear. And all of those things are valid and need to be heard and thought about and weighed in making that decision so that I don't feel misaligned or have built in resentment later on in that choice.
Yeah. I think an example that comes to mind where I see parents often like responding like the child driving the car, even when you think about a parental figure setting rules or a pediatrician giving you a needle, right? As a kid, that might be a terrifying thing to go to the doctor and have to get a shot. And now you're a parent. So are you taking your kid to the pediatrician with your parent self, the calm, caring, compassionate self? Or is your own inner child who's so afraid of going to the doctor and getting a shot the one taking the steering wheel in the pediatrician's office, right? So would that be like an inner child moment in parenting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to see ourselves within our children, and I think that's why they can be triggering, right? And there's also studies, right, that will show like people who have repressed traumas and things sometimes too, when their child is at the age in which they are experiencing the trauma, they get re-triggered, right? And everything kind of comes back. And that is because our kids are giant little mirrors for us, which is a great thing and also a really scary thing as a parent, right? So yeah, I think there are so many moments, and I don't think it's just your inner child, right? I think there's also parts of us that are like, if we had an angry like teenage version of us who likes to rebel, right? And when our kid says no to us on something that we know is good for them, right? Is that other version of you there that's like, you're not
Reactivity.
allowed to
Yeah.
say no? Like,
I've been waiting my whole life to say, I'm the parent. I'm in charge now.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's so many parts at play in being a parent. And I think a lot of parents talk about that, right? I think that's also too, like, especially in the work that we do, we see so many parents who are nervous about, like, and I hear it at least from my clients, right? I'm so scared to F up my kids, right?
Mhm.
Like, we all have that. And I think that's like why people seek doing this work. And I don't know if there is a way to not like mess up at some point. I think that's human nature, right?
Yes,
But I think
if you're
it
one of
really is
my
a
clients, you've heard me say many times, like, let's just accept that you are going to somehow mess up your child, and that is just
yeah.
part of parenting.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, just the way that I talk about it in couples, right? It's not so much about the perfection of it, right? It's more about like, can you show up and have that resolve, right? And for the parents that
Repair.
are really struggling, I also remind them that to create secure attachment, which if we don't know is the attachment style that we all are aiming for, you only need 30%. Okay. So
Mhm.
30% is really reachable.
That means that you get to mess up 70% of the time, and 30%
Yeah.
of the time, you're, like, nailing it.
I hadn't heard
Nailing
that
it.
statistic. And even though my kids are like well into adolescence and teenager, I'm going to still hold on to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Only 30%.
30%.
That's really reachable.
Yeah. So I think sometimes people who are maybe approaching the age where they want to or need to start thinking about becoming a parent, sometimes their past is really has a strong, like almost like an anchor to them. And
Yeah.
sometimes I hear people say, like, I want to become a parent because I didn't have the past or the childhood experience that I want to be able to give my kids. Or sometimes people say, I want to avoid being a parent because I don't feel like I have the tools that I didn't have, the right experience. I didn't have the parents that really taught me how to become a parent. And so, what you're kind of saying here is that we don't have to let that part necessarily take the wheel. That
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, those can be considerations, but if you don't want them to be, that maybe they don't need to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah. I mean, I think even in my own life, right? I've had both of those on both ends where there was a part of me that was like, "Oh my God, I never want to do this because what if I mess up my kid?" And also the opposite end of like, "Oh my God, I totally want to do this because I think I'd be great at it." And like I think I'd do
Mhm.
the opposite and nurture a child in a way that maybe I wanted to, right? But I think that there are so many things to consider. I think also like there's also like financial and this and that and whatever, right? And I think it is such a personal decision. And I think you are the only one who can dictate if you want to do this or not. And I do think our past plays a role in it, but I don't think that it has to be the only guiding force into the choices that we make. And not just in being a parent, but in our life. Our past can color things in our life, but it doesn't have to be the deciding factor on anything. Like, the second we do that, we lose our choice, you know?
Mhm.
We give our power back to the things that we've experienced.
What would you say to someone when someone is really struggling with that decision? What's been helpful?
Readiness, people say all the time, like, I want to feel ready. Readiness is not a feeling, it is a
Mhm.
decision. It is a choice. And you're actually never going to feel that because it's not a feeling. There are things for everybody that might make them feel more ready or more prepared for something. And we can totally think and consider what that is. And it's nice to have that skeleton, right? But at the end of the day, it is a choice. And I also tell people, at least for me, how I get to readiness is I get comfortable with the idea that, yeah, there's a possibility that I could totally mess up. And there is also a possibility that I can do great. And I put my faith back into myself and I know the work that I've done. And I know that I can take accountability when things fall apart. And that in itself means that even if I experience something that I consider a failure, right, then I have the ability to also learn and grow from that and be a better version of myself. And then that in itself means it could never be a failure. So, in a roundabout way, you'll never be ready, and that's okay. But there are things that might help you feel ready, and it's okay to consider what those things are. And then at one point, you just got to jump in. All good things start with a leap of faith.
Love that. So, how do you know if it's your inner child taking that leap? Like they're just jumping off the top step and the stoop.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like really sitting with yourself. One of the big things that they talk about in parts work and in any type of like therapy or work that we're doing with ourselves is really like needing to self reflect and look at ourselves and taking that time. Another thing I tell people all the time is that, like, I have so many sayings, guys. Another thing that I tell
Love
people
that.
is you can't see yourself in boiling water. So if you're feeling frantic, you're probably so far outside of yourself and you are not making a decision from like a place where you are really sitting in that decision. You're making it out of fear, out of anxiety, out of whatever is coming up for you in that moment. The best thing we can do is ground back into ourselves, whether that be through breathing, journaling, whatever your personal thing is, or talking to your friend or your therapist. And really like ask yourself, like, what about this feels good? What about this am I scared of? What can help me feel more comfortable? And are there some things that I'm never going to feel perfectly comfortable on? And I just have to be comfortable with that too.
Be
I
okay
think
with not
it's
being
self
okay.
reflection. Yeah, I think it's just self-reflection, and I think that's how you know. And I think with parts work, sometimes, yes, there is like you can definitely feel a difference, and sometimes it's all kind of blended together. Um, Especially once you get to that more whole part, it does start to blend all together. But I think it's about really just like honoring whatever shows up, even the parts that, when we say something in our head that we're like, "Ooh, I would not share that with the public." That's okay. You don't have to, but it's okay to acknowledge that that
Unless
also
you're on our
exists.
podcast, and then you have to share it with the public, right?
Sure, but I mean, like, I'm thinking about, like, for an example, there's so many societal structures on, like, what a good parent should be, and I think especially women tend to deal with this a lot. Not that I don't think men deal with it too, but I think women do have, like, a really hard structure of, like, what we should be as a parent, you know? And I think there are things like, for an example, like, I don't want a kid because, they're hard, or I like want to be selfish and I want to travel the world and do whatever I want. And I don't want to have to think of another kid. In theory, someone might be like, that's such an awful thing to say. But that's also okay if that's your truth.
Mhm.
And it's okay to also honor that. Right. And I think that's how you get to this decision. You like don't fear away from the things that you think would be shameful to say out loud and you honor all of it.
I think that's so important because, I'm just thinking of people that I talk to that are trying to figure out if they want to have kids or not. And the thing that comes up is like, I don't know if this is the should have a kid. They're like, I don't know if that's me or if that's society.
Uh-huh.
And some of our work is just figuring that out. Is this a me thing or is this society telling me I should have a kid? And it's so
Yeah.
confusing when, look, like, when you're a kid, you go into, for girls, they go into the toy store and the toys marketed to girls are dolls. From the time you're a baby, you're being told you should be a mom. That's really confusing if you don't want to be a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when moms find like, when women decide I'm actually all set. I don't want
Mhm.
that. Right. Like
Mhm.
the backlash you might get in that. Oh, you're gonna regret that. Who will take care of you when you're older? Like,
Mhm.
you
Which is
know?
not the
It's a
reason to have children.
Newsflash.
totally.
Like,
But
it
it's
is a
right.
lot of work to have children. It is much easier to hire an aide to wipe your butt when you're old.
Right. You can have more money if you don't have kids to save for your.
Yeah, and then there's the opposite, right? Like some people think that kids will like totally enhance their life. And I've seen it, right? Like I've seen people like their lives blossom after having children because they do. They bring you like all of this fun and wonder too. They also like make you want to like bang your head against a wall sometimes, but they're also great. And it's just, I think, deciding what feels good for you, right? And that's
Yeah.
what I mean too about the boiling water reference, right? You got to quiet out the noise. There's always going to be noise. You got to settle it down and ground back into yourself.
Right.
There
And
is always going to be noise. I mean, I'm thinking of people now, they have more than 3 kids. Then there's the shame that comes on that side of the thing. Like, ugh, how do you manage? Or why would you want to do that? It's like you
Uh-huh.
can't win and you can't
right.
for trying, It's like,
Yeah. And
that's,
you have, we all have, like you said, we all have this internal family, right? So, like, there's an angsty teenager and an inner child and your inner therapist and the wise, nurturing self, right? And then we have our external family. So, people get a lot of noise too from that external family. When are you going to have kids? Why don't you have children by now? Don't you want to make me a grandma? Even when you do have a child, when are you going to have another one? So, turning down the noise, the boiling water that's either being thrown at you or that you're swimming in really is so important because it is a I mean, I'm going to say something that seemed obvious to me, but I think isn't obvious to a lot of people. Like, it is a decision.
Yeah, oh, I mean, also too, like, there's also the aspect of like all the things related to our like medical health too, right?
Mm.
Is it harder for you to have children? PCOS, endometriosis, anything like that, right? Or just like your age, right? And that too, your biological clock is ticking. Like, why haven't you had a kid? There are so many factors at play to having a child. And like, sure, sometimes they show up without us putting thought into it. And that's also totally okay, right?
And sometimes they don't show up when you've put a lot of thought into it.
Exactly, right? But at the end of the day, like it is a big choice. Even too, like let's say you are someone who is struggling to have a child. That process is so hard. To make that choice is committing to that as well. And that's a hard thing to commit to. And it's also okay if you don't want to commit to that, or it's okay if you do want to commit to it. And it's about really sitting with yourself on like what feels good for you. A big thing I talk about is like your quality of life. Does this fit your quality of life?
And then it's the decision.
And
That's
it's
like
the
the
decision.
most simple form of it, really.
Right.
Does this fit
Mhm.
my quality of life? And deciding on it.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's not that simple, but that is a really beautiful
Yeah.
reframe.
And I think that one of the things that makes this harder is you can change your mind and the quality of your life can
You can.
change. And also, there's a lot of external and even internal noise because there is that clock ticking, that reproductive clock. And for women, after the age of 35, fertility significantly decreases. And so the chances of conceiving on your own significantly get less and less every month. So I think it's okay. I think for a lot of people, it feels okay to say, like, oh, I'm not sure. I'm going to sit with this or I might change my mind. It's really hard to say, I'm going to sit with it or change my mind when there's a clock just like getting louder and louder as you're sitting with your feelings.
Yeah, it is hard, but you can't always get away from hard things, right? And just because they're hard doesn't mean that we can't do them, and doesn't also mean that we shouldn't do them. It is hard to sit in the unknown and then think about the fact that I have to also think about this and think about the fact that I want to think about this and I want more time and I need that more time. But like again, using the reference of like if it were someone who maybe is like older and trying to have kids and this fear of it, like it's a hard process. If you're not sure and you're going through that process, it's going to feel 10 times harder,
Yeah.
right? It
What
is
would the inner
difficult.
child say?
I mean, I think it depends on what your inner child says because everybody's inner child is saying something different. But I mean, you could see it in so many women who go through IVF or, go through like IUIs and when it's not working, like this internalization of "Well, there's something wrong with me. I'm a failure, right? There's something wrong with my body, And it is, it's so hard. I saw something, the other day in like one of the many forums of IVF, and it was actually someone who was born out of IVF, and they were writing to the group talking about how they were so honored that their parents made such a dedicated choice and how they love their life and how grateful they are for their life because their parents made this decision, like such a choice and decision to also have to go through all of that and to still get to be here because of that choice. And it was like to encourage everybody. And I think that's in the concept of IVF. But when you even look at it that way, what a beautiful thing that you get to already choose so much love for your little child, however you decide to do it, to make that choice.
Yeah.
Or even the other way, because it is a really loving act to also decide I can't do that if you know it's just not for you.
Yeah. So her inner child might have felt really taken care of by that decision.
Mhm.
And somebody else's inner child might have felt really not seen.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a decision that can go either way. There is no right
Mhm.
or there's no bad parts and there's no right or wrong.
Absolutely.
I very much have respect for people and plenty of people get pregnant without a decision, and then they make decisions on how they want to proceed and show up and all of those things. But I have so much respect for people, despite what their decision is, who really think about becoming a parent and who really
Yeah.
put the thought into it.
And you have no idea until you do it, right? Because all of the knowledge that you have is from your childhood. And maybe from
100%.
watching or seeing other people, but like the experience, the lived experience until you become a parent is only of being a child.
Yeah. Which probably adds to the fear of making the choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if your childhood was, if your, especially if your childhood was not the storybook childhood that we are told exists somewhere.
Still looking for it.
Yeah. We're writing our own stories, Megan. It's the 2026 childhood storybook.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like, I think we talked about this in a different podcast, but it's like, what brought you joy when you were a child that you want to do again? And really inviting those opportunities into your life,
Yeah.
Let her play. Let them play a little bit.
We're just not giving them the keys to the minivan.
No keys.
They get to sit in the driver's seat with the car off and like play on the steering wheel with the grown up standing by, but we're not giving them the keys and saying, okay, take us to our destination.
Okay.
So Jillian, our podcast is, the things that no mom told you, things that you had to learn on your own that you couldn't have known until you were forced to know it. What would you say to people out there who are maybe thinking about their own childhood experiences and wondering about if and when or how even they're going to be a parent? What would you say that thing is?
Yeah, I think I would tell people you don't have to let your past dictate your choice in becoming a parent or not, you know?
Your past doesn't have to dictate your future.
Yeah, it can color it without defining it.
There, you said it,
I did it.
Jillian. I hope your child part gets to go out tonight and have so much fun, and your adult part and your therapist part.
Yeah. The parts get to have fun. Jillian, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. It was great talking to you both.
All right. Have a great time tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending this time with us. If you found yourself nodding along or saying, same, that's kind of the point.
We hope you leave today feeling a little less alone. This is what no mom told you. And yeah, there's more where that came from.